I am Adrian Cole, and I am 34 years old. The morning everything broke apart began like a promise. Soft sunlight spilled through the wide windows of our apartment in Brookhaven Heights, turning the white curtains golden and warming the framed engagement photos lined carefully along the wall. Smiles frozen in glass. Hope preserved in neat rectangles. In every picture, I looked certain of love, certain of the future, certain that the ground beneath my feet was solid. I didn't know yet that certainty is often the last thing you feel before it disappears. Before I go any further, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Stories like this find people who've had to choose between love and expectation, and your support helps these stories reach the hearts that need them most. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie, humming absently while rehearsing figures for a meeting I was already late for in my head. My fiancée, Maya Rivers, had left earlier for her shift at the clinic, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume and a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Don't forget lunch. I love you." I smiled at it like a fool in love, because that's exactly what I was. My phone buzzed on the dresser. Mom calling. I answered with ease, warmth already in my voice. "Good morning, Mom." There was no reply. No greeting. No sigh. Just silence, long, deliberate, heavy. "Mom," I said again, the smile slipping. Finally, her voice came through, tight and controlled. "Adrian, your father and I need to talk to you." Something in her tone cooled the room instantly. "What's wrong?" I asked, already bracing myself. Another pause. Then she said it. "We've decided the wedding cannot go on." The words landed without ceremony. No build-up. No cushioning. Just impact. "What?" I whispered. My father's voice cut in sharply, firm and final. "You heard your mother. We are calling it off." I laughed softly, reflexively, the way you do when reality doesn't make sense yet. "Dad, the wedding is in 3 weeks. "Yes," my mother said. And that's exactly the problem. I leaned back against the dresser, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Explain to me what you mean." My father cleared his throat. "Your elder sister, Maribel, is still unmarried." The room tilted slightly. "Okay," I said carefully. "It is not right," he continued, "for you to marry before her. People will talk." "People," I repeated, disbelief sharpening my voice. "We raised you with values, Adrian," my mother said. "Order matters." "Order?" I asked. "This is my life. Family comes before selfish desires," my father snapped. My hand started to shake. "So you want me to cancel my wedding because my sister isn't married?" "Yes," my mother said, firm and unyielding. "It's final." The line went dead. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Across the room, wedding invitations sat stacked neatly on the dining table, envelopes addressed, futures sealed. Or so I thought. And just like that, everything cracked. Maya was in the kitchen that evening, tasting soup, humming softly. She smiled when she heard the door open. "You're home early," she said, still facing the stove. I didn't answer. She turned slowly. The smile faded. I stood frozen near the door, jacket still on, eyes distant. "Maya," I said quietly. "We need to talk." She turned off the stove. "What happened?" I swallowed. "My parents called." Her shoulders stiffened. "Okay." They canceled the wedding. The spoon slipped from her hand and clattered loudly against the tile. "Canceled," she whispered. I nodded. "Because my sister isn't married yet." She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "That's not real." "I wish it wasn't." The silence between us felt thick, suffocating. "I already quit my second job for the wedding," she said slowly. "I moved my mom's surgery date. I told my church. I told my friends. I didn't agree with them," I said quickly. She stepped closer. "But did you stop them?" I had no answer. Maya inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Adrian, I love you. But I won't be someone's placeholder." "That's not what this is," I insisted. "Then what is it?" she asked, tears gathering. "Because right now it feels like I'm being punished for your sister's life." I reached for her hand. She gently pulled away. "I won't beg for a place I already earned," she said quietly but firmly. "Decide who you are before this wedding decides for you." She walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I stood alone in the kitchen, realizing that love, once tested, demands courage, not comfort. That night, Maribel Cole sat in her childhood bedroom scrolling through social media. Another wedding announcement. Another smiling couple. She tossed the phone aside with a frustrated sigh. 39 years old. Successful. Independent. Unmarried. A soft knock came at the door. Maribel? Our mother stepped inside and sat beside her. We handled it, she said. Maribel's eyes widened. You did? Yes. Adrian's wedding is cancelled. Relief washed over her, quick and shameful. He won't hate me, will he? Maribel asked quietly. Our mother waved her hand dismissively. He'll understand one day. But deep down, Maribel knew the truth. This wasn't tradition. It was fear. And fear always collects its debt. By Sunday, the whispers had started. Church members leaned in close. Friends stopped asking about invitations. Maya stopped answering calls. I sat alone in the pew, staring straight ahead as the pastor preached about leaving and cleaving. The irony burned. After service, my aunt pulled me aside. Is it true? I nodded. She sighed slowly. Son, love doesn't wait for permission. Those words followed me home. And that night, I made a decision that would divide my family forever. The Cole family dining table had always been a place where control dressed itself as unity. I sat stiffly, hands clasped, jaw tight. Across from me, my parents ate quietly, forks scraping plates as if nothing had happened. Maribel sat beside our mother, eyes down, stirring her food without eating. So, my mother said lightly, work still going well? I looked up. Is that why you invited me here? My father frowned. Watch your tone. You canceled my wedding without asking me, I said evenly. We are your parents, my mother replied. And I am a grown man, I said. You didn't just cancel an event. You disrespected my life. Maribel finally looked up. Adrian. I turned to her. Did you ask for this? Her mouth opened. Closed. Silence answered me. My father slammed his fork down. Enough. This family has order. I stood. What about shaming my fiancé? That girl will wait if she truly loves you, my mother snapped. My eyes burned. She's not an object. And love doesn't prove itself through humiliation. Maribel's voice trembled. I never asked you to stop living. I nodded slowly. But you didn't stop them either. The truth settled heavily over the table. I picked up my jacket. I won't be controlled. Not anymore. I walked out. Behind me, Maribel covered her face as the cost of silence finally arrived. That night, Maya sat on the edge of the bed staring at her phone. A message she hadn't sent. I need clarity. The door opened quietly. She didn't smile. Did you fight for us? She asked. Yes, I said honestly. And I lost something in the process. I can't marry a man who hasn't chosen himself, she said. That's fair, I replied. She looked at me, love and hurt colliding in her eyes. This wedding, if it happens, must be because you chose me freely. Not rebellion. Not guilt. I nodded. Then give me time to do this right. She hesitated, then nodded. Time. Not promises. Across town, Maribel watched my car disappear from the street. Her phone buzzed. We did the right thing, our mother texted. Maribel dropped the phone. For the first time, she questioned it. And somewhere between fear and guilt, she realized something had already changed. The days after I walked out of my parents' house felt suspended, like time had slowed just enough to make every emotion sharper. The city kept moving, cars honking, people rushing to work, laughter spilling from cafes. But my world had narrowed to a single question that echoed in my head from morning until night. Who am I if I keep choosing peace over truth? Maya and I moved carefully around each other, like two people navigating a room full of fragile glass. We spoke, but only when necessary. We shared space, but not certainty. She went to work, came home tired, polite, distant. I watched her pack away wedding magazines we had once argued playfully over, the guest list she had color-coded, the fabric samples she'd collected like pieces of a dream. Each item placed back into drawers felt like a quiet funeral. One evening, she finally broke the silence. This limbo isn't fair, she said, sitting across from me at the small dining table. Not to you. Not to me. I know, I said. Then what are we doing? I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was heavier than words. I was unlearning obedience in real time, and that kind of growth didn't come with a schedule. I'm choosing you, I said finally. I just need to do it in a way that doesn't destroy me. Maya studied my face for a long moment. I'm not asking you to destroy yourself, she said softly. I'm asking you not to disappear. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake replaying my childhood like a highlight reel I'd never questioned before. Every decision approved. Every rebellion corrected. Every success measured by how well it aligned with expectation. I had been praised for being easy, respectful, the good son. No one had ever asked if I was happy, only if I was compliant. By midweek, the fallout had spread beyond whispers. Friends who had already booked flights called to ask what was happening. Some were gentle. Others were blunt. One coworker laughed awkwardly and said, "Man, I've heard of bridezillas, but parents canceling weddings? That's wild." Church felt unbearable. I skipped it entirely. Instead, I went for long walks, letting my thoughts unravel without interruption. Somewhere along one of those walks, I realized something that stopped me in my tracks. If I gave in now, it wouldn't stop here. This wouldn't be the last time my parents reached into my life and rearranged it to soothe their fears. It would only be the beginning. Maribel, meanwhile, was unraveling quietly. At first, she told herself everything was fine, that she'd been spared embarrassment, that tradition had protected her dignity. But the relief faded quickly, replaced by a strange hollowness she couldn't name. Friends asked about my wedding with curiosity that bordered on suspicion. A few knew the truth. Others guessed. None of it felt good. One afternoon at work, a colleague leaned over her desk and said casually, "So, your brother's wedding. What happened?" Maribel hesitated. "Family reasons." The colleague nodded. "Must be hard. Watching younger siblings move on can stir things up." Maribel forced a smile. But the words lingered. Move on. That evening, she sat alone in her apartment, scrolling aimlessly. She landed on one of Maya's old posts, a candid photo of us laughing in the kitchen, flour on our faces from a failed baking experiment. The caption read, "Building a life with my favorite person." Maribel's chest tightened. For the first time, she allowed herself to think the thought she'd been avoiding. What if this isn't about order? What if it's about me being afraid? She put the phone down and stared at the ceiling, the silence louder than any accusation. The breaking point came the following Sunday. I decided to go back to church, not to blend in, but to speak. My hands shook as I stood near the pulpit, waiting for the pastor to finish announcements. Maya sat near the back, unsure why she'd agreed to come at all. I hadn't told her what I planned to do. When the microphone was handed to me, the room quieted with polite curiosity. I was raised to believe obedience was love. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. That honoring family meant never questioning their authority. A few heads nodded. My wedding was canceled, I continued. Not by me, but by fear disguised as tradition. The room stirred. "I want to be clear," I said, scanning the faces I'd grown up among. "I am marrying the woman I love. Not because she waited. Not because she obeyed. But because she stood equal." Gasps rippled through the pews. I looked directly at Maya. "And if choosing her costs me approval, then I accept the price." The silence that followed was deafening. My father stood abruptly and walked out. Maya rose slowly, heart pounding, and walked toward me. She took my hand. In that moment, the future felt terrifying and real. The backlash was immediate. Family group chats went quiet. Invitations were returned unopened. My mother cried to friends about disrespect and shame. My father refused to answer my calls. I was no longer the easy son. I was the problem. Maya and I sat together that night, the weight of what I'd done settling between us. "I didn't expect that," she admitted. "I did," I said. "I just didn't know if I'd survive it." She squeezed my hand. "You're not alone." But love didn't erase the grief. I mourned my parents while they were still alive. I mourned the version of myself who thought doing the right thing meant doing what I was told. Weeks passed. Then months. We planned a smaller wedding quietly. No grand announcements. No pressure. Just intention. A modest venue. Fewer guests. Real joy. Maribel didn't come to the planning meetings. But she watched from a distance, the guilt growing heavier with every update she heard secondhand. Finally, one night she called me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I closed my eyes. "For what?" "I didn't stop them," she said. "And that's on me." I breathed out slowly. "I forgive you," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't erase boundaries." She cried quietly. "I understand." For the first time, it felt honest. The wedding day arrived without spectacle, but with peace. Maya walked down the aisle radiant, not because she'd waited, but because she'd been chosen. When the officiant asked, "Who gives this woman?" she smiled and said, "I do." The room erupted in applause. My parents weren't there. It hurt, but not enough to undo the joy. Marriage didn't magically heal everything. Within the first month, the silence from my family pressed in on quiet evenings. One night, Maya said gently, "They didn't call today either." "I noticed," I replied. "Does it still hurt?" I thought carefully. "It doesn't hurt the way it used to. But it still matters." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We're building something new. That takes time." I kissed her forehead. "Thank you for staying." She smiled sadly. "Thank you for choosing." Across town, my mother watched the wedding video alone on her tablet. She paused on Maya's smile, her hands shaking. "She didn't even wear the veil I picked," she muttered. My father walked past. "You're still watching that?" She turned him against us. My mother snapped. My father stopped. "No. We did." That night, my mother cried, not for tradition, but for control slipping through her fingers. Maribel's world began to shrink. At brunch, a friend asked casually, "So why didn't you stop your parents?" "I didn't think it was my place," Maribel said. The friend shrugged. "Silence is still a choice." The words followed her home like a shadow. She stared at her reflection and whispered, "I hid behind fear." And for the first time, she admitted that fear had been running her life. Months later, I met my parents at a cafe neutral ground. "I didn't come to argue," I said calmly. "I came to be clear." My mother crossed her arms. "You humiliated us." "You tried to control me," I replied. My father spoke quietly. "We were wrong." My mother snapped. "No, we were," my father repeated. "I love you," I said. "But you don't get access to my marriage unless you respect it." My mother's voice cracked. "You'd choose her over us?" "I chose adulthood," I said softly. For the first time, she had no answer. By the time winter came, something had shifted. Not everything was healed, but something was honest. And honesty, I learned, is the first step toward freedom. Healing did not arrive loudly. It did not knock on the door or announce itself with apologies and grand gestures. It crept in slowly, quietly, in moments that surprised everyone involved. The first sign was peace. Not happiness, peace. It showed up on a random Thursday evening when Maya stood in the kitchen stirring soup, music playing softly from her phone. No tension in her shoulders. No rehearsed conversations in her head. Just presence. I watched her from the doorway, struck by how different the air felt when fear no longer lived in the room. "You okay?" she asked without turning. I nodded. "I'm realizing peace feels unfamiliar." She smiled. "That's what happens when chaos leaves." But peace did not erase grief. It only made space for it. There were nights when silence hurt more than arguments ever had. Family group chats remained quiet. Birthdays passed with short, polite messages, or none at all. Holidays felt strange. Smaller. Lighter and heavier at the same time. The first Thanksgiving we hosted ourselves was awkward, but meaningful. No forced conversations. No unspoken rules. Just a few close friends, laughter that came easily, and food that didn't taste like obligation. Maya moved confidently through the kitchen, apron tied at her waist, humming as she cooked. Later that night, after the guests left and the dishes were done, we lay awake in bed. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked softly. "Standing up?" I asked. "Yes." I thought carefully. "No. But I grieve what I hoped it would be." She nodded. "Two things can be true." That became one of the quiet rules of our marriage. Honesty without cruelty. Across town, my father sat alone in his car outside our apartment building one evening. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the lights in our windows. For decades, authority had been his language. He knew how to lead, command, decide. He did not know how to apologize. Watching his son choose dignity over obedience unsettled him in ways he couldn't name. He whispered to himself, "I raised him strong, just not for me." It was the first time pride loosened its grip. My mother, on the other hand, wrestled loudly with her loss of control. She told friends she had been disrespected. That tradition was dying. That children no longer listened. But late at night, alone, she replayed the wedding video again. Maya's calm smile haunted her, not because it was defiant, but because it was free. What frightened her most was not broken tradition. It was irrelevance. Maribel's reckoning came quietly but decisively. She deleted her dating apps, not because she had given up, but because she had stopped chasing validation. She enrolled in therapy after weeks of hesitation. In her first session, the therapist asked, "What do you fear most?" Maribel swallowed. "Being left behind." "And who taught you that?" the therapist asked. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice cracked. "My family." For the first time, she wasn't blaming me. She wasn't blaming Maya. She was looking inward. Healing, she learned, was not loud redemption. It was uncomfortable honesty. Life moved forward. Maya returned to church without fear. When a woman leaned over one Sunday and whispered, "You're brave," Maya smiled gently. "No," she replied. "I'm whole." She began mentoring younger women. Quiet conversations over coffee, late-night phone calls, reminders that love should never require shrinking. She told them plainly, marriage is not endurance. It's partnership. I watched her confidence grow and felt proud in a way that had nothing to do with ownership. One afternoon, while we were visiting extended family, an aunt leaned toward Maya and asked with a laugh, "So, are you pregnant yet?" I stiffened. Maya smiled calmly. "No." The aunt laughed again. "Clock's ticking." "Our life isn't a race," Maya replied evenly. Later, I apologized. "I should have said something." She squeezed my hand. "You did, by standing with me." Marriage, we learned, wasn't about defending each other loudly. It was about alignment. The knock came on a quiet Saturday morning. Maya opened the door. My mother stood there, uncertain, holding a small gift bag like a shield. "I didn't come to fight," she said quietly. "I came to apologize." Maya hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, my mother's voice trembled. "I treated you like an obstacle instead of a blessing." Maya listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't rush forgiveness. "I don't expect anything," my mother added. "But I needed to say it." "Thank you for taking responsibility," Maya said. It wasn't instant healing, but it was a beginning. Weeks later, Maribel invited us to dinner. She stood nervously by the table. "I need to say this out loud," she said. We waited. "I let my insecurity hurt you," she continued. "I was afraid that you moving forward meant I was failing." Maya reached for her hand. "Your journey isn't measured by ours." Maribel cried, real tears this time. And for the first time, she felt free. Holidays changed. Smaller gatherings. Healthier conversations. Less performance, more honesty. Our home became a place of peace, not proof. One evening, Maya asked, "If we have kids, what will we teach them?" "That love doesn't compete with fear," I said. "And that tradition should serve people," she added, "not silence them." We held hands, certain. The test shook in Maya's hand one morning. Positive. She sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing, not with fear, but responsibility. When she told me, I knelt in front of her. "I promise," I said, voice steady. "Our child will never inherit our wounds." She smiled through tears. "They'll inherit truth instead." When my mother heard the news, her first question was, "Is it a boy or a girl?" "We don't know," Maya replied. "If it's a girl, we must. We won't repeat old rules," I said gently but firmly. My mother froze, then nodded slowly. "I'm learning." It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. They named her Noelle, meaning peace after the storm. As Maya held her, she whispered, "You won't carry what we survived." I cried openly. My father stood quietly in the corner, realizing legacy was not control. It was change. Years later, Noelle asked innocently, "Why did Grandma almost stop your wedding?" "Because people sometimes confuse fear with love," I answered. She nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad you chose love." "So am I." They tried to delay my future for the sake of tradition. But tradition without compassion becomes a cage. And when love was finally chosen, it didn't destroy the family. It freed it. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need the courage to choose love over fear.